He told me to leave my seat or he would call backup, so I stood up, walked out, and 10 minutes later, the governor of the state walked in asking where I was. What the cop did not know, the black man he humiliated in front of a restaurant was not just another nobody. He was the former advisor to the governor and the last person you should try to silence. This is not just about racism. It is about what happens when power meets the wrong man and loses. Keep watching to see what happened when the whole town found out. He does not belong here. Get up and leave, now, or I will call backup. The voice thundered through the restaurant like a slap across my dignity. The fork in my hand trembled. Around me, chairs scraped. Conversations dropped mid-sentence. Coffee cups froze mid-air. The young waitress who had just served me stood paralyzed, her trembling hand still gripping the tray. Standing just inches from my table was a uniformed police officer, Officer Brent, as his badge read white. Broad-shouldered, with a jaw clenched so tight it looked like it might shatter. His hand hovered inches from his holster. His eyes were not scanning the room. They were locked on me. Not the man in the corner booth with a beer at noon. Not the woman speaking loudly on her phone. Me, a man eating lunch. Alone. I looked down at my plate. A simple meal. Roast beef sandwich. Sweet potato fries. Water with lemon. Nothing about me screamed danger. Nothing except my skin. I said, now. I slowly wiped my mouth with the napkin, my hands steady. Though my heart thundered, I looked into his eyes, calm, polite, controlled. That always made them angrier. May I ask why? Officer, my voice was low, measured, the kind of voice I spent decades mastering because, in this country, calm could save your life. He did not answer me. He turned to the manager, a pale man with thinning hair, who had been watching from the kitchen door. The man nodded quickly, nervously, avoiding my gaze. I think it is best if you leave, sir. The manager muttered. Just a misunderstanding. No need to escalate. Misunderstanding. That word again. I stood up. I did not argue. I did not resist. Because I knew the script. I would lived it before. The man who resists becomes the threat. The man who speaks up becomes aggressive. The man who asks why becomes the headline. As I stood, the officer leaned in, whispering low enough for only me to hear. People like you need to know your place. The words burned. Not because they were new, but because they were old. Too old. As old as the first time I was followed in a store. As old as the time I got stopped for driving a nice car in the wrong zip code. As old as the time my son came home crying because his classmate called him a thug in training. I picked up my coat. The restaurant watched in stiff, breathless silence. A child at the next table asked his mother, "Mommy, why is the man leaving?" The mother pulled him close. Shh. As I stepped outside, the cold air met my face like a bucket of ice water. But I did not shiver. I did not cry. I sat down on the stone bench just outside the window of the restaurant and stared inside through the glass. No one met my eyes. The waitress turned her back. The manager went back to the kitchen. Officer Brandt walked to his squad car like he would just cleaned up the trash. They did not know who I was. Not the man I had become. Not the man I had once been. not the man I was about, to show them I still was. The moment I sat down, I reached into my coat pocket, pulled out my phone, dialed a number I knew by heart one had not called in a while. Not since I left politics. Not since I swore I would stay quiet. It rang once. Cole. Came the voice on the other end. Crisp. Female. Powerful. I am going to need a lunch appointment, I said. Voice even. Right now, at Miller's Diner. There was a pause. Understood. Give me 10. I hung up. Inside the restaurant, Officer Brandt had returned, standing by the door like a dog guarding a gate no one asked him to watch. Every time he glanced outside and saw me still sitting there, his nostrils flared. He did not know who I was, but he was about to. The world had changed since the last time I stood in the public eye. Or at least, it told itself it had. But this moment, this lunch, had just reminded me of a truth I had spent too long trying to forget. You can wear the nicest suit. You can earn the highest honors. You can serve your country, your community, your people. But to men like Brandt, you will always be the one who does not belong. But I belonged. More than him. More than most. And in about 5 minutes, they would all remember exactly why. Because not everyone has lunch with the governor. And not everyone is Jeremiah Cole. Not everyone has earned the right to sit where others said he could not. Not with fists. Not with fury. But with something more terrifying to those who live on fear. With dignity. My name is Jeremiah Elijah Cole. I am 52 years old. African American, born in Selma, Alabama, a son of steel and sorrow, raised on hand-me-down books and hope, the kind of black that does not get lighter under sunlight, the kind that walks into a room and is noticed not for who he is, but what they fear he might be. But I did not start out powerful. I started with calluses on my fingers from helping my father repair broken engines behind our shotgun house. I started by walking 5 miles to school every day because the district lost our bus. I started with shame soon into my uniform, not because of what I did, but because of what people like me were not supposed to become. My mother used to say, "Jeremiah, you fight quiet. Like roots, you do not scream. You grow." So I grew. Quietly. Steadily. I served this country, United States Army, 2 tours in Iraq. Came home with medals I never wore and nightmares I never spoke of. Then I went to college on the G-bill, studied political science. People said I was crazy to aim high, but I did not listen, because I believed that one day, this country would stop seeing me as a shadow. I would become the light. At 34, I was elected city councilman. At 38, I ran for state legislature and won. By 45, I was appointed senior policy advisor on civil rights for the governor's cabinet. Governor Ellis. Yes. That Ellis, first female governor of our state. White, blunt, brilliant, and, surprisingly, she listened. We disagreed more than we agreed, but she never once treated me like I was there to check a box. She treated me like I was there because I earned it. We fought hard battles together. Prison reform. Police accountability. education access. I lost friends, got death threats, even got followed home once by a man in a red pickup with an Confederate flag sticker and a gun rack in the back. But through it all, I kept eating in the back corners of restaurants, choosing seats closest to exits, carrying my head even when I went jogging, smiling politely when a stranger gripped their purse tighter near me. Because even when you rise, they do not forget your skin, and neither do you. 3 years ago, I retired quietly from public office. I wanted peace, bought a home near Lake Weston, started mentoring young black boys on weekends, taught them how to tie a tie, how to shake a hand firm and kind, how to look a man in the eyes even when it scares you. I thought I would done enough, that maybe now the world would leave me be. Let me grow tomatoes and red Baldwin on my porch. But racism does not retire. It hunts. It waits. It finds you in diners during your quietest hours, when you are just trying to have lunch. Like today, Officer Brandt did not see Jeremiah Cole, the decorated veteran, the civil rights policy architect, the man who helped pass 5 pieces of bipartisan legislation. He saw a black man sitting alone in a restaurant, too expensive for someone like that. He did not see the legacy I carried. He saw the lies he believed. So I did not argue. I did not shout. I did not reach for my wallet or say, "Do you know who I am?" Because dignity does not need to perform. It only needs to stand still long enough for the truth to catch up. And the truth was on its way. Inside the restaurant, I saw the manager pacing, saw a customer whisper to another. The weight of their complicity hung heavy. Not one of them said a word when I was thrown out. But now they watched because something was shifting, because they would noticed I had not left, because maybe, just maybe, they sensed something coming that would rewrite what just happened. I leaned back on the bench. I did not look nervous. I was not. I would face Taliban gunfire. I would face state hearings and Senate votes. I would face the grief of burying my mother without enough money for a headstone. A scowling cop did not scare me. But still, the H was there, a deep, familiar sting, a voice whispering, "What if you had been younger? What if you had not made that call? What if you were someone else, someone without power?" I did not sit there just for me. I sat there for them. For the boy in Camden who walks to school past drug deals because the buses do not run through his neighborhood. For the girl in Pine Bluff who stopped raising her hand in class after her teacher called her too sassy. For the janitor who gets asked to show his badge while working late, while the white intern walks past unbothered. I sat there so someone could see what happens when we stay, when we do not let them move us. Because sometimes just sitting is a revolution. I glanced at my watch. 8 minutes had passed. The air had shifted. People started looking out the window. Phones were out. The hum of curiosity buzzed like a storm about to hit. And then I heard it. The low, soft roar of black tires on concrete. Then the unmistakable sound of a government sub-engine idling. Doors opening. Heels on pavement. The voice that followed was not loud. It did not need to be. "Ma, Cole, I am sorry I kept you waiting." I turned. Governor Ellis, right on time. And just like that, the balance of power tilted. The people who told me to leave. They were about to find out who I was. and they would never forget again. He stood with his thumbs looped inside his belt. Legs wide, chest puffed like a rooster bred in arrogance. His mirrored shades reflected nothing but himself. Officer Caleb Brandt, age 38, 5'11", ex-football linebacker turned cop with a superiority complex so deep. Even the asphalt seemed to crack under his boots. He did not flinch when the governor's SUV pulled up. He did not lower his gaze when she stepped out. He did not even blink when her security detail held the door for her like she was royalty, because to Brandt, the world still revolved around his badge, his gun, and the silent nods of approval he would grown used to from his department. In towns like Weston Ridge, men like Brandt were not just protected, they were cultivated. See, Brandt was not a one-time mistake. He was a legacy. His father had been a Sergeant Tough, loud, known for cleaning up the streets, even if that meant a few bruised faces or broken teeth on those types. His uncle, a sheriff in the neighboring county, and his cousin, well, let us just say the district attorney's office, had a soft spot for Brandt blood. He grew up hearing stories at backyard barbecues, stories about them, told in low chuckles over beer and burnt ribs. He learned early, black meant danger, poverty meant laziness, and anyone who challenged him was either a threat or a liar. When Brandt joined the force at 24, he walked into the precinct with swagger and a reputation for getting results. What that meant, though, depended on who you asked. To the department, it meant closed cases, fast arrests, and no questions asked reports. To the community, it meant false stops, bruised wrists, and boys thrown to the pavement for walking too confidently. Brandt had 6 complaints filed against him by the time he turned 30. All dismissed. Lack of evidence. Cooperative witnesses. Internal review. Rinse. Repeat. He had a way of looking at you like you owed him an apology, just for breathing. And in Weston Ridge, where the city was 70% white, 25% black, and 5% invisible, that look could strip you of your humanity in seconds. So when he saw me, a black man in a suit, eating alone at a white-owned restaurant, not flinching when he walked in, he did not see a citizen. He saw a problem, one he knew how to solve. With volume, with threats, with dominance. He did not recognize me. He did not need to. Men like him never asked names when they pushed us out of stores, off sidewalks, or down stairwells. They only needed one reason, because I said so, and that is exactly what he had done. But today was not just another power trip. Today was different. Because today, the woman stepping out of that SUV wore power like armor. And she was not here for small talk. Governor Eloise Ellis was a force. 57. Sharp-eyed, silver-haired, white, and unapologetically no-nonsense. She ran on education reform, survived 3 death threats, and could dismantle a press corps with one raised eyebrow. She was the kind of politician who made enemies for breakfast and signed bills before lunch. And the moment she stepped onto the pavement and walked directly toward me, not Brandt, the entire street seemed to tilt. Brandt narrowed his eyes. I stood slowly from the bench. Governor Ellis did not stop until she reached me. And then, With the whole restaurant watching from behind their grazy glass windows, she extended her hand. Cole, she said, I am so sorry for the delay. I took her hand. Thank you for coming. She turned toward the restaurant, then glanced sideways at Officer Brandt, who was still frozen near the door. Lips tight, hand twitching near his belt buckle. You can lower your hand. Officer, she said coolly, you are not in danger, unless you consider professionalism a threat. He hesitated, then slowly stepped back. The silence was deafening. Governor Ellis and I walked into the restaurant. The manager blinked. The waitress dropped a spoon. A couple in the corner whisper shouted, "That is the governor." And just like that, every eye was on me again, but this time, not in judgment. In confusion. In realization. In guilt. I walked past the table I would been ejected from and reclaimed it. The governor sat across from me. Officer Brandt remained outside, radio in hand, pacing. Inside, the air thickened with discomfort. The waitress approached our table. Flushed. May I get you both something to drink? The governor smiled, sharp as a blade. Yes, your finest lemonade for Mayor, Cole, and a coffee for me. Thank you. As she walked away, I caught her wiping a tear. Because that is the thing about injustice. It infects quietly. It sits in the silence of those who should have spoken up. It festers in the apologies never given. But today it was exposed. Because the man they threw out, he was not just some stranger. He was a builder. A policymaker. A survivor. A black man who refused to stay down. And the officer who thought he was untouchable. He had just touched the third rail. And the current had only begun to hum. It was not just what he said. It was how he looked at me. The way his eyes glazed over my humanity. The way his lip curled in distaste when he saw me sitting there, alone, eating with a cloth napkin folded neatly in my lap. It was the look that said I was trespassing, that I would broken an invisible line drawn not in law, but in culture, a boundary as old as the soil we walked on. It was the same look I would seen on the faces of shop owners when I asked for the restroom, the same look a bank teller once gave me when I tried to cash a check, the same look a school administrator gave my son when he said he wanted to apply to Princeton. That look, it never changes. And for some reason, no matter how many years you have endured it, it always bruises something inside you. The coffee cups clinked quieter in the restaurant now. The knives and forks slowed. Even the sizzle from the open kitchen had hushed, as if the entire place was holding its breath. Me, sitting beside the governor of the state. Officer Brandt, the enforcer of yesterday's rules now, forced to watch through glass like an outsider. I was not eating anymore. I was making history. The waitress, younger than my daughter, nervously placed our drinks down. Her hands trembled. She would not meet my eyes. I did not blame her. Some people do not know how deep they are drowning in a system until the water turns to fire. The governor leaned forward slightly, voice hushed but deliberate. Caleb Brandt's file is a mess. I have had complaints from 3 different precincts, but he gets reassigned, protected by the union, protected by silence. I nodded. I knew the drill. Internal affairs, always under-resourced, always pending review. Them. And now, she met my gaze. Now, he put hands on the wrong man. I did not smile. Not out of bitterness, but because there was no joy in being the spark that set off a fire you did not start. No joy in knowing it had to happen this way, public. Humiliating. Dramatic for anyone to listen. That is the cruelty of racism. It makes your suffering a spectacle before it makes it a cause. She sipped her coffee and studied the room. They are watching us, she said, trying to decide whether this is justice or just a photo op. It is neither, I said quietly. It is just the truth finally sitting at the right table. She did not speak for a moment. Then, just above a whisper, she said, I need you to speak tomorrow. Capitol Hall. Press conference. I blinked. No. You would be the most powerful voice. No. I repeated. I do not want to be a symbol. I have done that. I want the system to work without needing martyrs. The governor studied me. Then she nodded, not in agreement, but in understanding. Outside, Officer Brandt shifted uncomfortably. He had back up now another squad car. Another officer. But they did not approach. They just stood. Radioing, pretending to observe. But I knew the truth. They were confused. Their world had bent. The man they thought they could silence was now being served lemonade by the same people who had looked away. And that scared them. I turned to the window. A small boy, no older than 10, pressed his face to the glass. Watching us, his skin was deep brown. Like mine, his shirt slightly oversized, his eyes wide. Unblinking, I raised my glass to him, just a quiet motion. He smiled. Then his mother pulled him away. But I knew even if she forgot this moment, he never would, because representation does not just matter. It transforms. The governor stood. I will speak tomorrow. I will call for investigation. You do not need to stand with me, but your silence will still roar. I stood too. Then let it roar. We walked to the door, the same one I was once ordered to exit from, like I was garbage needing to be swept away. Brandt took a step forward as we approached, but Ellis held up a hand. Officer Brandt, she said, I will be speaking with your chief. He opened his mouth. Auntie, she added coldly, just do not. His lips closed. I turned to him, this time meeting his eyes. He did not speak, but I knew that look too. It was no longer power. It was fear, because deep down, he understood. I did not need a badge to be stronger than him. I had the truth, and the truth is heavier than any gun. It was only after the governor's SUV drove away, trailing silence and stares in its wake, that the real storm began. I did not go home. I did not turn off my phone. I did not crawl back into comfort. No, this was not over. I sat alone in my car, parked under the bare-limbed tree that stood outside Miller's diner like a sentry to truth. The sky had shifted to a dull steel gray, thick with the weight of coming change. The air was dense with tension and invisible pressure that comes only before a reckoning. I pulled out my phone again, but this time, I was not calling the governor. I was calling the community. See, What most people forget is that real power does not sit in marble offices or press briefings. It sits in the voices that whisper in barbershops, the emails sent after midnight, the mothers who never stop talking even when no one is listening. I opened a group chat: old friends, mentors, activists, the new generation who called me out of love, not obligation. Jeremiah Cole, he threw me out of a diner today, just because I was alone, black, breathing. He did not know who I was. That is not the point. We move now. Quietly. Fully. You in. The replies came within seconds. Lucas Graham, civil rights attorney. I have been waiting for a crack in the dam. Count me in. Deborah Tate, former principal. I still got the file from the kid Brant slammed in 18. No justice yet. Marlon James, journalist. Already writing. You are going to want to read the headline tomorrow. Leela Harris, community organizer. Public Forum Friday. I will make sure there is a seat with your name on it. It was not an army, but it was enough to shake something loose, because we were not going to war. We were going to court. We were going to the cameras. We were going to the streets, not with chants, but with files, footage, testimonies they thought had been buried. Because if I had been someone else that day, less connected, less useful, the story would have ended there, right on the sidewalk, between shame and silence. But I was not someone else, and I refused to waste the spotlight. I started gathering the text messages from strangers who'd witnessed Brant's rage before but never dared report it. The grainy video from a teenager who decaptured the diner incident from across the street. The trembling voicemail from an older woman who once filed a complaint against Brant after he forced his way into her home on a noise call, her only crime. Playing Mahalia Jackson too loud on a Sunday. Each piece came together like shards of glass, forming a painful mosaic. And as the puzzle took shape, one thing became clear. Officer Caleb Brant was not an outlier. He was the blueprint, and the system he thrived in. That was the architect. The press came first. A news anchor called me. Then another. Some were cautious, afraid of the politics. Others hungry for the heat. But it did not matter. I gave them the statement I would written at 3 a.m. That morning. I am not the story. The story is the system that allows a man with a badge to treat someone like me, someone with years of service, sacrifice, and policy to be treated like a threat simply for existing. The story is what happens when the cameras turn off. The story is how many voices you will ignore before one is finally too loud to bury. That afternoon, my inbox overflowed. Old friends, enemies I had not heard from in decades. A letter from a retired white officer. I saw what Brant did. I have seen worse. I stayed silent. I am done being silent. Even an anonymous message from within the department. You are not the first, but please be the last. By nightfall, a small crowd had gathered outside the diner, not angry, not shouting, just present, standing, holding photos, Candles. Names. Some of the names I recognized. Others I would forgotten. Others had never been known. I walked through them quietly, nodding, touched shoulders, whispered thanks, and in the stillness, a voice cracked the silence. "Ma, Cole, what are we supposed to do?" It was the boy from earlier, the one who'd looked through the glass with such wide eyes. He stood now with his mother, hand in hers, gripping tight. "What are we supposed to do when they treat us like this?" I knelt in front of him, looked him in the eyes. "Son," I said, "you stand, even when they push you down. Especially then." He nodded, and I knew something had already shifted, not just in me, but in them, in all of us. Because sometimes the revolution does not come with a bang. Sometimes it comes with a bench, a stare, and a refusal to leave. And sometimes it begins with a question. What are we going to do next? The sanctuary of Mount Haven Baptist was packed before sunrise, not for service, not for a wedding, not for a funeral, but for truth. I had not stood behind a pulpit in nearly 12 years. Not since my father's burial, when I read Psalm 23 through tears and trembling hands. But on that morning 1 week after the incident at Miller's Diner, I stood there again, only this time. It was not grief that gripped me. It was fire. Word had spread faster than I expected. What began as whispers in barber shops had become banners on buildings. "We stand with Cole," a phrase I never asked for, never needed, but one that meant the world to every person who'd ever been told to sit down. The pews overflowed with people from every corner of Weston Ridge, black, white, Latino, old, young, straight, trans, Muslim, Christian, atheist. Because this was not just about race. It was about place, and who was allowed to belong. I scanned the room. Familiar faces nodded back. Principal Tate in her Sunday best. Lucas with his legal pad and tired eyes. Marlon with his camera already rolling. Leela Harris beside her teenage volunteers. Fists folded over their chests like armor. And then she walked in. Governor Eloise Ellis. No motorcade, no press in tow. No podium. Just a woman in a gray coat, hair pulled back, heels echoing down the church aisle like a drum beat of reckoning. She did not try to take the stage. She sat in the front pew, quiet, listening, waiting. I took a breath and stepped up to the microphone. "Before you hear about what happened," I began, voice echoing through wood and stained glass. "Let me tell you what did not happen. I did not raise my voice. I did not threaten violence. I did not reach for anything but my napkin. And still, they saw a threat. The crowd murmured not outrage, but understanding." I continued. "This is not about a sandwich, or a badge, or a single officer who forgot the meaning of service. This is about a sickness that says authority equals immunity, a sickness that says your skin determines your status, a sickness that makes good people watch in silence while bad people write the rules." I paused, looked down. Then I said it. "I have spent most of my life trying to be respectable enough, educated enough, decorated enough to be accepted. But no matter how many titles I earn, how many governors I advise, I still walk into rooms where people grip their wallets a little tighter, where a man with a badge can decide I do not belong and no one stops him. I turn to the governor. I thank you for standing with me, but I ask you now, will you stand for us? The church was silent. Ellis stood, walked up beside me. Then she faced the crowd not as a politician, but as a citizen. I was raised by a mother who never locked her door, and a father who kept a badge on his nightstand. I believed in order, in rules, in systems. But Jeremiah Cole showed me something I cannot unsee. That sometimes the system does not break, it works exactly as it was designed, and it must be redesigned. She turned to me. I will call for the suspension of Officer Caleb Brandt, pending an independent investigation. I will advocate for statewide civilian oversight in every police precinct, and I will push for mandatory racial bias training for every officer, not once, but annually. Gasps, applause. A woman shouted yes. Ellis was not done, and I am not here to lead a movement. I am here to follow one, led by people like Jeremiah, like all of you, because true leadership does not speak first. It listens. The crowd stood. It was not political. It was holy. I reached out my hand. She took it, and in that handshake, decades of silence cracked. Somewhere in the back, a choir member hummed. Then another joined. Then the whole room erupted in harmony. Ain't he gonna let nobody turn me round? We sang it like a promise. Outside, the media swarmed the front steps. But inside, something sacred had started. Something that could not be captured in headlines or sound bites. A revolution not of rage, but of return. Return to dignity. Return to decency. Return to belonging. And Officer Brandt, wherever he was, had just felt the tremble, not in his badge, but in his legacy, because the walls were talking now, and the people were done whispering. It started with a knock, not the aggressive kind Brandt was known for. No, this one was soft, almost hesitant, the kind of knock that says, "We know what is coming. We just did not think it would come so fast." Officer Caleb Brandt opened the door to his modest two-bedroom house at the edge of town. He was still wearing his uniform pants, but the belt, the one that carried his weapon, his radio, his sense of invincibility was gone. In its place, a sagging waistline and silence. Standing on his porch was a deputy from Internal Affairs and a woman in a navy suit holding a clipboard. "Officer Brandt," the woman said flatly, "you are being placed on administrative leave pending the investigation ordered by the governor's office. Effective immediately." His face did not move, not even when she held out the folder, not even when the deputy asked politely, too politely, his badge and department-issued firearm. Only when his hand brushed the edge of his badge, felt the metal cool in his palm, did the panic flicker behind his eyes. "This is a mistake," Brandt muttered. The woman did not blink. "We will let the evidence speak for itself." The door shut behind them with a quiet that felt louder than any siren. And just like that, the shield that had once made him untouchable began to crack. Meanwhile, I sat in a folding chair across from Layla Harris, the young organizer with a heart like wildfire and a schedule tighter than a Senator S. We were inside a cramped community center, where a whiteboard listed a week's worth of action plans. Press training, legal clinics, voter registration. Leela scribbled while her phone buzzed nonstop. Brant S. suspension is trending, she said without looking up. But they are already spinning it. I raised an eyebrow. Spinning how? Saying it was overreaction, that this is just political theater, that you are using your past connections to settle scores. I sighed, not from surprise, from fatigue. The truth always came with a side of denial. Leela leaned forward. You know they will try to make you the villain now, right? They already did, I said, the moment I sat down to eat. She nodded, then asked quietly, You sure you are ready for what is next? I was not ready when I went to war. I was not ready when I buried my father. I was not ready when they threw me out of that diner, and yet here I am. Her lips curled into the faintest smile. Then let us raise the heat. That week, the movement stopped being local. National networks picked up the story. My voicemail filled with interview requests. A morning show called me the voice America needed. Late-night anchors cracked jokes at Brant's expense. But I was not laughing, because the spotlight does not heal wounds, it only shows where they have always been bleeding. What mattered was not the attention, it was the testimonies. One by one, people came forward. A delivery driver who said Brant shoved him into his truck for lingering too long outside a white neighborhood. A Latina nurse who recalled Brant pulling her over twice in 1 week because her taillight looked suspicious. A retired schoolteacher, white, soft-spoken, who admitted she would seen Brant berate a group of black teens outside a gas station and did nothing. Their voices filled conference halls, filled letters to the city council, filled the inboxes of lawmakers who could no longer pretend this was a one-time thing. It became bigger than Brant. This was about a blueprint, one written into the sidewalks of Weston Ridge, one that told certain people they could walk freely and others they should only run. On Friday, I stood before the Police Oversight Board for the first time in years, not as a policymaker, not even as a victim, but as a witness. My name is Jeremiah Cole, I said into the mic, and I am not here today because I want revenge. I am here because I want reform. Because no badge should be a license to dominate. Because no community should fear the people meant to protect them. Because no child should grow up believing their skin is a reason to duck their head when a siren wails. I paused, then added, and because if we do not fix this now, we are not just failing justice, we are failing memory. And memory, my friends, has teeth. The room stood in silence. Not resistance. Not applause. Just silence. That sacred moment when people finally understand they are standing on a turning point. Later that night, I passed by Miller's Diner again. This time, the windows were dark. A printed sign hung crookedly on the door. Closed for renovations. We will return with a new direction. I stared at the sign, unsure whether to laugh or cry. Not for the owners, not even for Brant, but for everyone who would never get their moment. The ones pushed out of diners, churches, jobs, and justice who did not have a governor on speed dial, who did not have a name the press remembered. I stood under the street lamp for a long time. Then I whispered into the dark, "May we never waste this pain," and walked away not as a man who won, but as one who withstood. Because the badge had cracked, but the real breaking was still to come. The hearing room was standing room only, rows upon rows of pressed suits, weathered faces, nervous aides clinging to notepads like lifeboats. Flashbulbs popped through the stained glass of tall courthouse windows. Reporters whispered into wireless mics. The seal of the State Commission for Law and Ethics loomed behind the central table. But all eyes were fixed on one man, Officer Caleb Brandt. No badge, no uniform, just a wrinkled beige shirt that had seen too many apologies and not enough remorse. He sat alone. His department had refused to send a lawyer. His union rep had not shown up. The crowd was a mixture of public officials, community members, victims, and one very still, very quiet man in the front row, me. I did not want to be there. I had no appetite for humiliation, no thirst for spectacle. But I had learned long ago that justice is not about what feels good, it is about what makes good possible. Across from Brandt, the ethics panel reviewed the 43-page document Marlon had leaked, a detailed timeline of Brandt's offenses dating back over a decade, dozens of names, traffic stops that turned into nightmares, body cam footage that went missing, citizens who lost jobs, children, dignity, all because they crossed paths with a man convinced that his uniform made him king. And then they called me to speak. I stood slowly, walked to the podium. The microphone seemed to pulse with the breath of every person in the room. I never wanted to know this man. I began, but he made sure I would. Murmurs. When I sat at that diner, I was not thinking about race. I was thinking about how my grandson extra mustard on his sandwiches. I was thinking about the sermon I was writing. I was thinking about peace. But Officer Brandt saw me, and he did not see peace. He saw a problem. He did not know I had advised the governor. He did not know I had drafted the very policy he claimed to enforce. He did not know I would serve this country, raised a family, paid taxes, built schools, and it did not matter, because what he saw was my skin. A pause, a ripple of emotion behind the stern faces of the panel. And let me be clear, this is not just about Brandt. This is about every silence that let Brandt grow stronger. Every look away, every form signed without review. Every boys will be boys meeting behind closed doors. This system let him thrive. But today, it ends. And then I did something no one expected. I looked directly at Brandt. "You remember what?" you said to me. "People like you need to know your place." He shifted in his seat. Well, here I am, Brandt, in my place. And guess what? It is in front of you. A gasp. A woman clapped once before catching herself. I stepped away. No anger in my chest. Only resolve. After hours of deliberation, the verdict was unanimous. Officer Caleb Brandt was to be dishonorably discharged from duty, barred from law enforcement service in any jurisdiction. Effective immediately. No appeal. No reinstatement. No pension. He stood shaky, small, a man who had spent decades building a fortress on a foundation of fear. Now crumbling. He did not say a word. He just walked out. No applause followed. Only the creak of the door behind him as it closed. Outside, the crowd had gathered, not to jeer, but to witness, to mark a moment where the air shifted and something heavy lifted from our lungs. The boy from the church was there again, this time with a sign he had drawn in crayon. Being good should not get you kicked out. I knelt down beside him. That is a good sign, I said. He smiled. Mom said you are like Martin Luther King, but quieter. I laughed, the sound catching in my throat. I will take that. Behind us, reporters jostled for quotes. But I did not speak to them. I would said enough, because real change does not echo through cameras. It ripples in living rooms, in classrooms, in conversations between mothers and sons, in quiet moments when justice finally breathes. That night, I walked into Miller's Diner. The lights were back on, the walls repainted. The manager was gone, retired. They said. A new sign stood at the front. Now under new ownership. Every seat is for everyone. A young black woman stood behind the counter. She wore a bright yellow apron and a pin that read, "We belong here." "Welcome, Ma. Cole," she said warmly. "Table for one." I smiled. "No," I said. "I will sit at the counter." She poured me a coffee. Strong. Unapologetic. I took a sip and exhaled, not relief, but readiness, because the battle had been won, but the war for decency, for dignity, for place, it was still being fought in neighborhoods with no headlines, in cities where Brants still wore their badges like armor. But now, they knew we were watching, and this time, we were not leaving quietly. Change does not come with fireworks. It comes slowly like dawn creeping across concrete. You do not always see it arrive, but you feel the temperature shift. The air gets lighter. People walk differently. They look each other in the eye again. And in Weston Ridge, the town remembered. 3 weeks after Brant's discharge, something wild happened. People stopped whispering. The fear that had blanketed the sidewalks for years, the do not look too long, do not speak too loud fear began to lift, not in grand gestures, in small, deliberate ones. A white store owner, Ma. Callahan, hung a sign in his window, "We welcome all." No exceptions. It was not political. It was overdue. Teenagers painted murals under the overpass fists. Faces, flowers, names of those silenced by fear. No one painted over them. The city did not order them removed. For the first time, they were allowed to stay. I got invitations to speak in high schools, not as a hero but as a reminder. A 9th grader raised her hand during a conda and asked, "Do you think this town is better now?" I paused. Then I answered, "No. But I think it wants to be." And wanting, that is where it starts. At the next school, a group of white students stood and read a list of apologies not for guilt, but for silence. They said the names of classmates who'd been stopped more often, punished more harshly, mocked more cruelly. I stood at the back of the auditorium, hands clenched, breath caught, tears hot and unexpected, because no legislation could teach that. That was the human heart. Waking up, and then came the day I could not prepare for. It was a warm Saturday morning when I heard the knock. Not firm, not angry, just present. I opened the door. Brant. Plain clothes. Eyes hollow. Face thinner. I did not speak. He took a breath. I know I do not deserve to stand here. I remained silent. He held out a worn manila folder. Letters. From people. Some good. Some not. I kept them. Never responded. He hesitated. There is also one from your son, from years ago. I never delivered it. That hit harder than anything else. My son, Micah, quiet, strong. He would had a run-in with Brant at 17. Never told me. Said he handled it. I believed him. But now, this. I opened the folder. Inside was a single page, torn from a school notebook. Dear Officer Brant, I do not know what I did to make you mad. I just wanted to get home. But when you slammed me on the hood and said I know your type, I did not say anything because I knew no one would believe me. I just want to know, what type do you think I am? Micah Cole. My knees nearly buckled. Brant looked down. I read that letter every year, every damn year, and I never answered because I did not have one. Silence stretched between us. I have lost my job. My family does not speak to me. I know it is not enough, but I am trying. He turned to leave, but I called out, "Stop." He froze. I stepped outside, held the letter in my hand. Tell me why you are here. Really? His eyes met mine. Because I want to know what it feels like to finally see the man behind the skin I used to hate. We stood like that, two men broken by different things, bound by a history we did not write but had lived in every day. I am not here to forgive you. I said, I would not ask. He replied, but I will say this, you can rewrite what you did, but you can unwrite what you might be done next. He nodded, slowly, then walked away, and I let him. Not because he deserved it, but because I did. Because the people who had stood beside me, Leila, Marlon, Deborah, Micah, and hundreds more had fought for a world where justice did not end with punishment. It had to go further, to transformation. That evening, I returned to Mount Haven Baptist for a community gathering, not a protest, not a press conference. Just neighbors. We ate together, shared stories, laughed in between memories. An elder played the piano, and the children danced in the aisle without fear of being told to sit down. Micah stood beside me. He did not bring up the letter, but when we locked eyes, he nodded a small, seismic gesture. It said, I know now, Dad. I see why you stayed calm. I see why you never left. And more than anything, I see you. As the sky dimmed and the church lights flickered, I stood up one last time, not at a pulpit. Just in the middle of the room. I have been told my whole life to go back where I came from. But let me tell you something. I never left. I never left the dream. I never left the fight. I never left the seat they tried to pull out from under me. Because I am exactly where I belong. And now so are you. The room erupted, not in applause, but in presence. In unity. In belonging. The streets remembered who stood up, and this time they stood too. There is something holy about a meal shared in silence, not the kind born from discomfort, but the kind that comes when the world has finally exhaled. I sat at Miller's diner again. Same seat, same table, same window, but nothing was the same. The new owner, Vanessa Green, 32, black, single mother of two, born and raised right here in Weston Ridge, was wiping the counter with rhythm and pride, her hair wrapped in a vibrant orange scarf. She wore her presence like armor and light. The staff, young and diverse, moved like they belonged, because they did. The menu had changed, too. Still had the roast beef sandwich, but now it came with a side called dignity. And underneath the drinks, list in small print, we do not ask why you are here. We ask how you would like your coffee. That morning, I was not alone. Micah was beside me. Tie loose, sleeves rolled up. He was days from opening his own youth counseling center, funded entirely by donations that came pouring in after he wrote an op-ed titled, "My Dad Got Kicked Out So I Could Walk In." Leela joined us, exhausted but electric. Her community grant had been approved. They were starting a legal aid clinic in the building, where Brandt's precinct once stood. Marlon sat across from me, camera at his side. Eyes scanning. Always documenting. His docuseries The Diner Chair had just won a regional Emmy. He said he did not care about the trophy. He just wanted to make people feel what we felt that day. And then there was Governor Ellis, not in heels, not in a motorcade. Just Aloys, in jeans and a sweater, stirring her tea slowly. No press. No security. Just 5 people. And a town that had turned its face toward the sun. Outside. Things moved differently now. The Weston Ridge Police Department had a new chief, Janelle Ortiz. Latina. Former community liaison. First in her family to wear the badge. Her first act. Mandatory community rotations. Every officer now had to spend 30 hours a month in the neighborhoods they patrolled, not arresting. Just listening. The oversight board, once a dusty formality, now met weekly, open to the public. Streamed live, minutes posted online. School kids in town now wrote essays not just on Abraham Lincoln, but on Leela, Micah, and even the day at the diner. Some classes took field trips to that exact table, the one where I would been told to leave. They would sit, and they would stay. The phrase caught on. We stayed. It became a mural downtown, painted by kids and elders alike. A black fist and a white hand, not clenched but clasped. Beneath it, we stayed. So our children would not have to fight alone. It was printed on pins, shirts, bumper stickers. It was not just about me anymore. It never really was. It was about every person who had ever been told, "You do not belong." and chose to reply, "I am not leaving." That night, I sat alone on my porch. Same porch, same wood beneath my feet, but my soul. Lighter, Micah came out, 2 mugs in hand. "Decaf," he said, handing me one. "You are getting old." I chuckled. "You will be saying that from this same porch one day." He looked around. "Think so?" "No," I said, turning to him. "You will be sitting in the diner, and no one will look twice, because the world won't ask what you are doing there. It will already know you are home." He nodded slowly. We sat in silence, the kind born not from pain but peace. And then, just before I stood to go inside, I remembered the boy from the church, the one who asked what to do when they treat you like you do not belong. If he were here now, I would say, "You sit anyway. You breathe anyway. You live anyway." Because justice is not always loud. Sometimes, it is just the sound of a chair not scraping back, of someone staying seated when the world says, "Leave," and you whisper back, "No, I belong here. I always have." And now, finally, so do we. In the end, it was not a courtroom that changed Weston Ridge. It was not the press conferences, or even the suspension of a man who once thought his badge made him untouchable. It was the simple act of staying seated. Jeremiah Cole did not shout. He did not fight back with fists or fury. He stayed in his chair, in his truth, in his dignity, and in doing so, he taught a town and a country that justice does not always need volume. Sometimes it needs presence. Sometimes, the most powerful revolution begins not with anger, but with refusal. Refusal to leave. Refusal to bow. Refusal to forget your worth. You do not have to be a governor, a lawyer, or a decorated soldier to stand for something. Sometimes, the most heroic thing you can do is simply not move. Stay in the room. Stay in the fight. Stay at the table even when the world tells you to go. Because you belong. And when you know that deep in your soul, there is no power stronger than your presence. If this story made your heart race, your throat tighten, or your soul whisper yes, leave a comment below. Share it with someone who needs to know they belong. Subscribe for more stories that reveal the power in all of us to spark change. Because this story is not just fiction, it is a reminder. And reminders like this, we need them now more than ever. We stayed. And now, it is your turn.